We have to be sick and tired of the same old program. Someone's murdered, we go through the funeral, we see all of these young people crying and they're weeping, but there has not yet been an opportunity to make the community think about choices and consequences.
What was the last direction of travel?
North on 1100 DeKalb, eastbound on Basin Street, black male, mid to early 20s, yellow sweatshirt and black pants.
As we set out to make a difference over these next 2 years, I think that what is going to be most significant will be pastors and church leaders beginning to acknowledge and to embrace the next generation.
There would be a union that would exist between mother and daughter, father and son, that there would be a bond that takes place with family.
The church has a moral obligation, and that kind of resonated within me and stayed within me, that we cannot sit on the sidelines of life and just think we can resolve problems within the four walls of our church, that we have to get outside in the community.
It's my desire that in Norristown that there be no homicides of young people, period. And a 12-month period, a calendar year is a good place to start.
On Christmas Day, there was a young man that was murdered. You know, we were at his funeral, and my son was with me, and I said to him, I don't know anything about this young man's life, but I do know this. I don't want to have to sit where his mother and father is sitting.
Nobody knows. They spoke to the man that came out and found my son bleeding to death beside his car, and he said he didn't see anything but two men fighting in the street.
Started screaming. I mean, screaming, crying, and screaming. That's all I could do. Help me! This is my baby! My son! I fought so hard to get him on the right track, and he finally got there, and now he's gone.
One of the things that we're endeavoring to do over the next 2 years is to create a documentary that's going to chronologize the effects of violence as it relates to the families, the victims, as well as the perpetrators, so that we can point the community to a place of reference, so that they can see it's not just the initial act, but it's the long after effects after the act.
Yesterday marked the 2-year anniversary of Ray's death. It's very frustrating that people won't come forward, because the child that they're not coming forward for is a child that would have gave his life for them.
We know that we're here to do a job, and when we know that the answer is out there in that community, and we know that somebody knows what happened and they don't want to speak up, it's very, very frustrating. We want to bring the bad guys to justice.
Somebody shot him and he never made it home. We need a camaraderie in our community. It defeats the purpose for everybody to know everybody if everybody doesn't help everybody or everybody doesn't love everybody.
We cannot do this by ourselves. You cannot lock violence away. You know, you cannot just preach it away. We have to identify the stakeholders in our community, and we have to make a conscious decision. We have to work together. We may not always agree. We may not always see eye to eye, but we have to work together to bring about sustainable and effective change.
I just feel that there's so many things that we can do together. The community, the faith community, the DA's office, the police department, with all of us working together, we can resolve these problems.
I always say that in America, when a white man shoots an unarmed black man, black people yell injustice, and they want it now, then, quick, fast. But when a black man shoots an unarmed black man, black people yell silence.
We need to be able to make an impact on our people to the degree that black on black crime becomes nauseating. We'll see Al Sharpton and various other leaders come to our community if it's a white on black crime, and the people of our community will become outraged. But when it becomes a thing where black on black crime exists, we become so lethargic, and it becomes such an accepted way of life that we have no reaction. It's a short-lived reaction, and then we go on with life as if nothing happened. We've got to become agitated, we've got to become upset about the issue of black on black crime in this community.
One of the things that we're trying to do, we're trying to identify what opportunities are currently in the community, what groups are doing to offer young people opportunities for positive engagement.
I think male mentors are very important and vital to our young people here in the community as well as nationwide. Unfortunately, many youth don't have the supports growing up, so it really does take the community and folks on the outside who are in position to be mentors. It takes our responsibility to help bring about change.
Personally, my family was affected by violence. And we have a perspective on both sides. I have a nephew that was murdered, and I also have a nephew that's in prison because he committed murder. And I see it from both sides of it, or experienced it from both sides. And there has to be someone that's going to challenge people to sit down and have a reasonable and an intelligent conversation.
And they were roundaboutly trying to get me to sit down. And by now I'm freaking because I know something's wrong, and are telling me that there was a fire at his father's apartment and that his body was found in the apartment and that he was dead.
I had an opportunity about a week ago to sit down with a young mother by the name of Jacqueline. Her son, Kevin, was murdered about 5 weeks ago.
And I was like, okay, so are you sure it was him and not somebody else? No, we're sure it was him. We're about as sure it can be. Then they proceeded to tell me that they believed it was murder. I just started screaming. I mean, screaming, crying, and screaming. That's all I could do.
And Jacqueline was able to help me understand the initial shock. And I knew at some point that's part of our process to talk about forgiveness, to talk about reconciliation. And I set it up in a way to her when I said, I know you're not there now, you're not at the place right now to talk about forgiveness, but do you think at some point you will be able to forgive the individual that murdered your son?
I think that maybe one day down the road I will be able to forgive. I know that God says you must forgive, but the actual act of what was done to my child is unforgivable to me right now. It's sick. It makes me sick, you know, and I can't even fathom what he had to go through for all of the stuff that happened to him, and that just breaks my heart and it tears me up inside. And I don't know how any one person could inflict that kind of damage on somebody and then just expect forgiveness. You know, so forgiveness comes in time, but I'm not even close to that yet.
When the funeral is over, when families have to go back home, when they have to pack up their loved ones' belongings, when they have to go to court for the trials and the preliminary hearings, you know, what does it really look like? To help us understand that it's not just a one-time act, it affects someone for the rest of their lives, not just the person that's the perpetrator and going to jail, but the family members on both sides. How do you live in a community and your loved one took the life of someone else? Every time we have a collective service, we have a pamphlet that volunteers can sign up. There's 5 different categories: night walking, financial support, you know, prayer of intercession, you know, phone calls, and all these areas, even buildings that we have access to, that people can volunteer to sign up. So whenever there's a need, if we need mentors, we have a list, a database of people that already has the desire, have the passion for mentoring that we can draw from. The process that we are stepping out by faith, and it's more so an opportunity. We're going in areas that we've never gone before. And that's one of the reasons we have this documentary that we're developing, so we can look back from time to time to remind ourselves of why we've made this step into this new territory.